Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 258. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you guys had a great week. We're counting down the days. We're almost to the November 5th election, and I can't wait till it's over. Quite frankly, it's every election year now is accentuating the divisions in this country. You're inundated with ads and text messages. Now they're texting you and the mailers that you get in the mail. And I just cannot wait until this is over and we're almost there. People are already record numbers of people are already early voting, and this is what it's all about. I mean, you're participating in a process that is a rare. If you look throughout human history, throughout all of human history, the democratic process that you're participating in is a rare thing in human history. And I don't know that it's going to be around in the future, too far in the future. I wouldn't bet on it. If I had to bet on the fact that this process, the democratic process that you're participating in, if it's going to be around in the future, I wouldn't bet on it. But if you're living right now, you're living in a sweet spot, and there hasn't been much of this democratic process in the past in human history. And again, I'm not too confident that it's going to be around in the future. So enjoy it, take part in it, and we'll see what happens. So I want to pick up where we left off in the last podcast. I have a lot to share with you guys today. We've been talking about change, and this is a change election. 7 in 10 Americans believe that the country is on the wrong track right now. So the people want change, and Kamala Harris, the current vice president and the Democratic Party's nominee, has positioned herself as the change agent. And Donald Trump is also positioned himself as the change agent. He's not in power. He's an outsider. It's, I think, a easier case for him to make than for her to make, but we'll talk more about that in this podcast. Now, we've been talking about Kamala Harris's economic policies, and we talked about the $25,000 down payment assistance. I believe it's a tax credit. We talked about how this is very similar to what George Bush did in 2002 with his down payment assistance and the initiatives that he put in play that created the housing bubble that led to the crash in 2008 is what we've been talking about. I told you and showed you that this $25,000 down payment assistance is going to be available to undocumented illegal people in this country. It's going to be available to people that can just show that they've paid their rent on time for a certain amount of time. I think that you're going to have a social security number, which I do believe that undocumented people are able to get social security numbers. But anyway, I've shown you guys and proved to you guys that this $25,000 down payment assistance is going to be available to undocumented. So that means that the other part of her initiative to bring down housing costs, to build more housing units, that those the new housing units that she's planning on building are also going to be available to undocumented and illegal migrants and people who are in this country illegally. And they're going to be able to use their $25,000 down payment assistance to purchase these new homes that Kamala Harris is going to build for them. We haven't talked much about the ban on corporate price gouging, which I want to get into today. And to start talking about this ban on corporate price gouging, because this is a very significant, and she's repeating this over and over again, and she's gotten tons of criticism from very esteemed economists that are telling her that this is bad. I don't remember what paper it was that came out with the article that says that if people are calling you a communist, running on price fixing is not a good idea if people are calling you a communist. So she's been getting a lot of flack for this price gouging and price fixing proposal on groceries. It's not a proposal to fix prices on automobiles or on widgets or anything else. It's a initiative to ban corporate price gouging at grocery stores on food. So I want to get into a little bit of this because she's not backed off on this, even though she's getting tons of criticism. She's steadfast that this is one of the initiatives that she wants to put in place is to put price fix food, put price caps on food is her initiative. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. This is a interview that Kamala Harris did this week with NBC News. Let's get into this.
For them, for so many voters, we know that a huge issue for them is the economy. Right. It's the cost of living. I've been on the campaign trail. I hear that in the field again and again. You look at some of the numbers on this, and our new NBC News poll shows that more voters think that the Biden administration policies have hurt them rather than helped them. And I wonder, are the last 4 years an obstacle to you in this race?
Here's how I look at it. First of all, let me be very clear. Mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring my own experiences, my own ideas.
So this is new. They've told her to say this because she was asked on The View, what's going to be different? Because you're running on change. What's going to be different? What would you have done different is what they've asked her. What would you have done different if, you were president than what the Biden administration? She couldn't answer. She was asked again about, by Colbert, couldn't answer. She finally said that I'm going to have a Republican in my administration, which means nothing. Obama had a Republican heading his Pentagon, his DOD. So she couldn't answer the question how she was going to be different. So now they've taught her to include this talking point into her arsenal. So now she's saying that I'm not going to be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring my own experience. She still won't tell you what she'll do different or what she would have done different. She just says, I'm not going to be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring my own experiences. I bring my own. What are those experiences?
Here's how I look at it. First of all, let me be very clear. Mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring my own experiences, my own ideas to it, and it has informed a number of my areas of focus, most of which are, on, to your point, lowering costs. I am traveling the country. I am very clear. Cost of groceries still too high. The voters know it. I know it. So part of my plan includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries, including the work I will do dealing with price gouging.
So price gouging is what her plan is. And she's talking again specifically about groceries, about food at the grocery store. This is what she's talking about. She's not talking about prices on everything. And prices on everything are double what they were when Trump. Inflation still today is double what it was when Trump left office. So prices are up on everything. But she is focused specifically on food. On groceries is what this price gouging proposal is about.
Hi, the voters know it. I know it. So part of my plan includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries, including the work I will do dealing with price gouging, something I dealt with when I was Attorney General, something I will deal with going forward. Cost of housing,
So she's been talking about this forever, about this price gouging proposal and how she's going to bring down prices by capping the the prices on food. And I've been waiting for someone to ask her, who are the companies that are doing this? There's only, I don't know. I mean, as far as major grocery stores, I mean, there's only a handful, maybe a dozen or so. I mean, you got your Krogers, you got your Safeways. I mean, you got your Sprouts, your Aldis, H-E-B. Who? I want someone to ask Kamala Harris. These grocery stores that you're going to target because of their price gouging, who are they? Who are the ones that are price gouging? I wish someone would ask her that. So she did this town hall event with Anderson Cooper on CNN the other night, and this topic comes up. Take a listen.
Let me introduce you to Eric Swenson. He runs a service desk for an IT company in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. He's registered as a libertarian, describes himself as an independent. He says he's undecided. Eric?
Thank you, Anderson. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Eric.
So my question is concerning groceries. Grocery prices have gone up quite a bit in the last 4 years. Yeah. And some people blame former President Trump. Some people
I'm
going
to just say this. I was in the grocery store the other day, and the prices of food, it is noticeable how much the price has gone up on food. I mean, I'm in the grocery store and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I just paid, $2 for that a few months ago. Now it's $4. I mean, this stuff is noticeable. And everybody notices it. Everybody has to shop for food. Everybody sees this.
So my question is,
but it's not price gouging. I'm going to show you. But it's not price gouging. Yes, the prices are going up and the prices are high, but it's not because of price gouging.
Grocery prices have gone up quite a bit in the last 4 years. Yeah. And some people blame former President Trump. Some people blame President Biden. Who would you say is correct? And what would you do to bring prices down?
Her performance in this town hall was absolutely, it was awful. It was completely awful. She doesn't answer any questions. She gets actually pushback from Anderson Cooper. We'll get into that here in a moment. But, this question is direct. Listen to it.
Yeah. And some people blame former President Trump. Some people blame President Biden. Who would you say is correct? And what would you do to bring prices down?
Who's to blame? And I wish you would have left the what would you do to bring prices down, because she's already told you what she's going to do. Her plan is to price fix, is to at the federal level set prices. That's her plan. So leave that alone. But the first part of your question, I wish you would have just left it at that. Who's right? Some people say that it's Trump's fault that prices are high on groceries. And some people say it's your fault, you and Joe Biden's fault. Who's right about that, Kamala? Whose fault is it that prices are so high on groceries?
Biden. Who would you say is correct? And what would you do to bring prices down for Americans?
Thank you, Eric. And you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high. And we need to address it in a number of ways. One of my aspects of doing what we need to do to bring down the cost of living for working people and the middle class in America.
She's not going to answer who's responsible, which is the first part of it. That's why I wish he wouldn't have even said, what would you do to bring out? I wish he would have just left it there at who is responsible, because she's never going to answer that. But she just goes into her plan, which includes the federal price fixing.
Eric, and you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high. And we need to address it in a number of ways. One of my aspects of doing what we need to do to bring down the cost of living for working people and the middle class in America is to address the issue of grocery prices. Part of my background and how I come to it is probably a new approach grounded in a lot of my experiences as a former attorney general, where I took on price gouging. And part of my plan is to create a new approach that is the first time that we will have a national ban on price gouging.
So a national ban on price gouging is another way to say that is federal price fixing. That's another way to say that. A national ban on price gouging, what she's talking about is federal price fixing.
And part of my plan is to create A new approach that is the first time that we will have a national ban on price gouging, which is companies taking advantage
Which companies?
of desperation and need.
Which companies? Safeway? Kroger? H-E-B? Who's doing this, Kamala? Name them. Who's doing this?
A new approach that is the first time that we will have a national ban on price gouging, which is companies taking advantage of the desperation and need of the American consumer and jacking up prices without any consequence or accountability. So that is one way. But to your point, Eric, there are a number of issues that we need to address in terms of bringing down the cost of living. It includes what we need is a new approach that I bring to the issue of affordable housing.
Oh, my God. All right. So then Anderson Cooper, this is one of the points where I was telling you that Anderson Cooper pushes back on her. And he says, I looked at your plan for price gouging and what you guys are talking about. Take a listen to Anderson Cooper here.
Let's ask you about price gouging. I looked at your plan. You talk about going after price gougers, and I'm quoting from the plan, on essential goods during emergencies or times of crisis. I get that. How does that help, though, someone like Eric with prices that for years the grocery prices just been high?
Well, first of all...
So listen, I want you to understand that question, because Eric here asked her, he says, look, prices on groceries are high. And he asked her, whose fault is that? Is it Trump's fault or your fault? She didn't answer because the answer is it's her fault. Her fault. She bears more responsibility than anyone is because she was the 51st vote in the Senate to pass the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that shot inflation up to 9%. But we're going to talk about that here a little bit more here in a moment. But yeah, so she's responsible. But Eric, is asked, well, what are you going to do to bring prices down on everyday prices at the grocery store? And she starts talking about price gouging. Anderson Cooper says, we looked at your plan, and your plan talks about in a moment of crises, when you have a hurricane or a forest fire or any other natural disaster or any other crises, and people using that crises to raise prices. That's what your plan says, is what Anderson Cooper says. How does that help Eric day to day when there's no crisis, but the prices at the grocery store is still high, is what Anderson Cooper asked her.
Going after price gougers, and I'm quoting from the plan, on essential goods during emergencies or times of crisis. I get that. How does that help, though, someone like Eric with prices that for years the grocery prices just been high?
Well, first of all, Anderson, as you know, and obviously CNN has been covering extensively what has been happening in the state of Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. It's a real issue. I was Attorney General of California. I was the top law enforcement officer of the biggest state in the country. I took this issue on because it affects a lot of people. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that we need to actually deal with accountability when these, not all, in fact, most don't.
Who?
But when...
Ask her who. Please, Anderson, just ask her who. She says not all, but some. Who? Who's doing this? Who's using the hurricane and the crises in Florida and Georgia to raise prices on people that are in the middle of that crisis? Who's doing it? Is it Safeway? Is it Kroger? Is it H-E-B? Is it Whole Foods? Is it Aldi? Who is doing it? Please name names. And somebody please ask her to name names.
I'm not going to apologize for the fact that we need to actually deal with accountability when these, not all, in fact, most don't, but when companies are taking advantage of...
She says not all, and most don't. Who? Who does? Who are you talking about?
Actually deal with accountability when these, not all, in fact, most don't, but when companies are taking advantage of the desperation and the need of the American people. We saw it actually during the pandemic as well, where because of supply chain issues, there was a reduction of supply, and then they would inflate the price of everyday necessities. Not to mention, by the way, again, Donald Trump should be here tonight to talk with you and answer your questions. He's not here.
All right. So, people, I want you to listen to Steve Forbes here and what he says about Kamala Harris's price fixing plans.
All right, let's bring in Forbes media chairman and editor-in-chief, Steve Forbes himself. Steve, you've been around for a little while. We had a problem with inflation, and it seems like the Kamala Harris plan is either let's price fix or let's give money away. In your experience, how is that going to work?
Well, you don't have to have a personal experience. Just look at the history books.
Right.
All you got to do is look at the history books. That's all you have to do. All these economists that are criticizing this proposal of price fixing, that's what they're saying. Just look at the history books.
Well, you don't have to have a personal experience. Just look at the history books.
Right.
I'm old enough, though, to remember Richard Nixon, how well those price controls worked and the great inflation of the 1970s. Look, whenever government creates a big problem, and this inflation problem is government created, government then says, you got to give us more powers, more control.
Listen to what he's saying, and he's absolutely right. Larry Summers, who was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary. Been talking about him every week, talking about this guy, Larry Summers, who was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary and then became Barack Obama's head of his economic recovery team when Obama came in. Larry Summers even is the one who said that the $1.9 trillion stimulus that Democrats did by themselves without a single Republican vote was going to cause inflation. 3 months later, inflation shoots up to 9%. Because of the government. The government caused the inflation. The government caused the rise in prices. And now Kamala Harris wants to come back after she caused the problem, was the 51st vote to pass the stimulus that created the inflation. Now she's coming with the proposal that she's going to put price controls on food to address the problem that she caused, is what Forbes is saying here. They caused the problem.
Inflation of the 1970s. Look, whenever government creates a big problem, and this inflation problem is government created, government then says, you got to give us more powers, more control to deal with the problem we created. And that's what we see unfolding here. On groceries, everyone's now pointed out 1% to 2% margins is hardly price gouging.
Everyone is pointing that out, what Forbes just said, is that these groceries, that's why I want her to name names. I want to know who she's talking about. I want to know if she's talking about Kroger. I want to know if she's talking about Safeway. I want to know if she's talking about H-E-B. I want to know who this woman is talking about. Ralph's. I think Ralph's is Kroger. Who are you talking about, lady? Because grocery stores have profit margins of 2%. 2%. Some of them have profit margins that are lower than 2%. But you're talking about 1.5%, 2% profit margins. Economist after economist has brought this up. So what are you talking about when you're talking about price gouging going on at grocery stores when these people have 2% margins?
Problem is government created. Government then says, you got to give us more powers, more control to deal with the problem we created. And that's what we see unfolding here. On groceries, everyone's now pointed out 1% to 2% margins is hardly price gouging, but they want to have the power to determine whether your prices are fair. That's a Soviet-style system.
Soviet-style system, Steve. It's a Soviet every single communist despot leader in the history of this world has controlled the price of food. Every single one. So now the 2% margins that Forbes was just talking about, every single economist has been bringing this up that has been critical of her plan to have federal price controls. They're like, what are you talking about? These grocery stores have 2% margins. What are you talking about? Well, Bill Clinton, when he was campaigning for Kamala Harris last week in Georgia, he goes into some explanation and explains away this narrative about the 2% margins. I want you to listen to a little bit of what Bill Clinton says here. I'm going to stop it, of course, and explain what he's saying here. But Bill Clinton, when he says this, he actually mentions a grocery store chain. We actually get the first name of a chain that Kamala Harris may be talking about. Let's listen to Bill Clinton here.
And one of the problems we got is when people kept telling you that inflation was down, you couldn't tell at the grocery store or the pump. There's a reason for that. The economists say that food prices change so much and fuel prices change so much, we can't put them in core inflation because there's no trend. It'll be up one month, down another. But here's why it affects you.
I want to just explain what he's talking about there. When you hear these people talking about inflation has come down and we're headed in the right direction with inflation, they're talking about core inflation. And that's what most consumers and most Americans don't understand when they're listening to the media, listening to MSNBC saying that inflation is coming down and we're heading in the right direction. And is what all these people are saying is that they're talking about core inflation. There's two different ways to monitor inflation, and there's core inflation and there's headline inflation. And the average person doesn't know the difference between core inflation and headline inflation. Bill Clinton understands the difference. And what he's explaining to you is that food and energy are so volatile, especially when you're in a inflationary period like we're in right now because of the spending that the Biden administration has done. We're in a inflationary period. So what the economists have done, they've separated these two metrics for determining inflation, the core inflation and headline inflation. Core inflation does not include the prices at the grocery store. So that's why Kamala Harris is focusing this initiative on price gouging, particularly at the grocery stores, because the grocery stores is not included in core inflation. So while they're telling you inflation is coming down, that's core inflation. But headline inflation, which includes food and energy, that's a different number. So that's why she's focusing her attention at the grocery store, is because the grocery store, the only way that she can bring down those prices is that as she fixes those prices. Those prices are not going to come down because those prices are volatile, like Bill Clinton says. Those are volatile prices because they're real. I mean, commodities. Food's a real commodity. Oil and energy, that's a real commodity. You can't fudge the numbers to bring the price of those commodities down. So that's why they're so volatile, and that's why they're not included in core inflation. So when they continue to tell you over and over again that inflation is coming down, they're talking about core inflation. That doesn't include the grocery store. That doesn't include the gas station. So that's what Bill Clinton's talking about here.
Reason for that. The economists say that food prices change so much and fuel prices change so much, we can't put them in core inflation because there's no trend. It'll be up one month, down another. But here's why it affects you. Maybe you got a locally owned grocery store here that you shop at, and they did the best they can. And if they're charging you more than you think you should pay, they're having to pay more
than you think you should pay. Yeah. Listen to what this guy's saying. Listen to what he says.
And they did the best they can. And if they're charging you more than you think you should pay, it's because they're having to pay more for food wholesale.
That's just economics right there. He's telling you the reason that the prices are high at the grocery store is not because of price gouging. It's because of what it costs to bring that product to the market. If it costs, they're still only charging 2% margins. So if I'm only charging 2% margins and my margins aren't going up, that means that the cost for me to bring that product to the grocery store is going up, which is inflation. So it's costing me more to bring this product to you in the grocery store. My margins aren't going up, but it's costing me more to bring this product to you because of inflation. That's why the prices go up. Even Bill Clinton says it here.
But most of the grocery market now is heavily concentrated and a few big owners, Whole Foods and the other chains and all that.
So he mentions Whole Foods. That's the first time I heard someone, when they're talking about this, mention a grocery store chain. And Bill Clinton's addressing Kamala Harris's price gouging proposal. And this is the first time I hear a chain mentioned. And I've been wanting someone to tell me who's doing this, who's doing the price gouging. So I guess it's Whole Foods. Maybe that's who Kamala Harris is talking about too. It's the first time I've heard a name of a chain. Whole Foods. And who owns Whole Foods, people? Who owns Whole Foods? Amazon owns Whole Foods. Everybody's up in arms today because the Washington Post has come out and said they're not going to endorse a candidate. Washington Post won't endorse in the White House race since the 1980s. The Washington Post has decided that they're not going to endorse this year. Who owns Washington Post? The same people that own Whole Foods own Washington Post. So you think it's a wonder that the people who own Washington Post, the guy who owns Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, that he's not going to endorse a candidate that's promising to fix the prices at his grocery store? But I guess Whole Foods is who we're talking about here. Let's listen to more of Bill Clinton.
You think you should pay, it's because they're having to pay more for food wholesale. But most of the grocery market now is heavily concentrated in a few big owners, Whole Foods and the other chains and all that. They earn a surprisingly low profit margin, but they're selling to a zillion people, right? So if I'm selling something to 1 million people and my normal margin is 3%.
It's not, no one's getting 3%. Maybe Whole Foods.
I charge 4%. I'm a rich person.
Listen to him.
That's what's going on with the food.
That's not what's going on.
Words,
that's a lie.
Not like
this is a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's not what's going on with the food. That's a lie. What Bill Clinton just says, that these grocery stores are raking it in because they're raising their profit margins up incrementally. No, that's not what's going on. What he said at first is the reason the prices are. So he says two different things. He says that the reason that the grocery stores, your local grocery stores, and the prices are going up at the small grocery store chains is because it's costing them more to bring the product to you. But at the large grocery chains, the reason it's costing you more is because they're inching up their profit margins to make massive amounts of profit because they're selling to so many people. It's not making sense at all. And Bill Clinton is lying.
Selling to a zillion people, right? So if I'm selling something to 1 million people and my normal margin is 3%, if I get to charge 4%, I'm a rich person.
Wow.
That's what's going on with the food.
That's a lie.
In other words, it's not like the profit margins have gone way up. They don't have to go way up. So this problem.
So this is his answer, because Bill Clinton's been hearing all of these economists like Steve Forbes and others, many others saying, wait a minute, these grocery stores don't have huge profit margins. You know, they're not raking it in. And Bill Clinton's answer to that is, well, they don't have to raise their profit margins up a lot to rake it in if they're selling to millions of people. It's a lie. The reason the prices are up at the grocery stores are the same reason that energy and groceries are not included in core inflation, is because those prices are volatile and they're subject to go up and not come down when you're in an inflationary era like we are right now because of all the government spending. That's the reason the prices are up. And that's the reason Kamala Harris wants to do federal price gouging on food, on groceries. Everyone's been talking about Bill Clinton on food, on groceries. Kamala Harris, even in the town hall, it's on food, on groceries. On her website, it's on food, it's on groceries. Now, she's not talking about price fixing on everything. She's not talking about price fixing on things that you buy on as far as furniture and things from your home. No, she's only talking about food. This plan is only about food. But her running mate, Tampon Tim Walz, this guy, he's even dumber than her. He's on The View and he's going off message because the whole message is about price fixing on food and tackling price gouging at the grocery store. But he's on The View earlier this week, and I want you to listen to what this guy says talking about fixing prices.
And then this idea of price gouging and price fixing. 37 states already have this in play. You saw when there's a hurricane in Florida, airline tickets shot through the roof. That's not capitalism. That's price gouging.
Airline tickets. So he's talking about, this is off message. This is off message. Everyone's been talking. Kamala Harris's plan is only for grocery stores, only to bring down prices on food. This guy says that airline tickets went up after the hurricanes, and we got to tackle that. We got to make sure these airlines don't raise their prices. People, if you vote for this, man, airline tickets is what this guy says. That airlines, after the hurricane, started raising the prices of their tickets. And this is an example that he's using for Kamala Harris's proposal for federal price fixing.
Price gouging and price fixing. 37 states already have this in play. You saw when there's a hurricane in Florida, airline tickets shot through the roof. That's not capitalism. That's price gouging.
Airline tickets. So you guys are gonna fix the prices on airline tickets too. So it's not only food, airline tickets too. What else? What other prices you guys are gonna fix? Huh? Wow. So now I want to start talking about the immigration, kind of transition into Kamala Harris's immigration proposals, because she's been asked about this recently, and finally a question that I've been waiting since June for someone to ask her. She is asked this week on the town hall that she did with Anderson Cooper the other night. She's asked directly, not the full, and she's been, no, I take that back. Brett Baer also asked her this question in the interview that he did with her last week, and she didn't answer it. But then she's pressed on it again a little bit further in the town hall that she did with Anderson Cooper. But this is in regards to the border and the Biden administration's policies after they came in, and the record numbers of migrants that came in under their watch. And this is the Brett Baer interview when she's asked about it in the beginning of that interview. And then we're going to go into listen to what she says in the town hall with Anderson Cooper the other night.
That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations.
So what's she talking about? She's talking about the bill. That's her only answer to this question, is that we had a bipartisan bill in February of this year, just a few months ago. We had a bipartisan bill, and Donald Trump, who's not in the Senate, Donald Trump, told members of the Senate who don't like him, members of the Senate that don't necessarily care what he says, members of the Senate, to kill the bill. And that's why the bill didn't pass, is because Donald Trump told them to kill it. She's been repeating this over and over again. So that's what she's talking about. The bill in February, that was the majority of the money in that bill went to Ukraine. There was also money for Taiwan, Israel, and then it was the border. So it wasn't just the border bill, but that's what she's talking about. That's been part of her narrative the entire campaign.
It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it.
So listen what he says. So he's trying to get 6 Democrats voted against it, and she finished her statement that Donald Trump found out about that bill and told him to kill it. So the 6 Democrats are listening to Donald Trump too? The six Democrats voted against it because of Donald Trump too, is what you're saying, Kamala Harris?
Because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you.
But actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem.
So why did these 6 Democrats vote against it? Why did these 6 Democrats vote against it? Both California senators voted against it. Bernie Sanders, Booker. Why did these guys vote against that bill? Because I just told you it had funding for Israel in it. That's why Bernie Sanders voted against it. That's why I mean, I know that's why Bernie Sanders voted against it. I'm not sure if that's why all these other guys voted against it, but Bernie Sanders is clear about the fact that he voted against it because he didn't believe that Israel should get money. So that's what I'm saying. This bill was not just a bill for the border. It was a bill that included funding for Israel, funding for Taiwan, and the majority of it went to Ukraine. That was the whole purpose of including the border in it so they could get the funding for Ukraine. I've already laid that out for you. But that's why 6 Democrats voted against it. And if 6 Democrats voted against it, how can you say that Trump is the reason that this bill died? It makes no sense at all.
Issue,
I hear you.
But actually is focused on fixing
6
it.
Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration.
Illegal migrants that came across the border after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ended Remain in Mexico, reinstituted catch and release, let record numbers of migrants across our border into this country. And these are just 3 of the victims that were killed by migrants because of that policy, is what Brett Baer is asking her about.
Who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred.
No, it shouldn't have occurred.
That is true.
No, it shouldn't have occurred.
It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had.
But that bill, this is the point. That's what he's trying to tell you, dingbat, is that bill in February, 9 months ago, that wouldn't have done anything to help these women and their family, or these girls, 1 woman and 2 young girls. That would have done nothing to help them because of the policy that you had already implemented in removing Remain in Mexico, implementing catch and release, allowing these migrants to come across the border. That bill in February 9 months ago would have done nothing to protect them. And then Brett Baier tries to get her to apologize. She won't apologize.
The pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
All right. So this is the mother of that poor child that was killed by the migrant. I mean, if you watch this interview, you've seen this. I mean, this is just brutal, people. This is just brutal. I mean, so anyway, this is the Bill Clinton again campaigning for Kamala Harris in Georgia. This is the Bill Clinton statement that Brett Baier makes reference to in this interview that Bill Clinton even says. Bill Clinton, who's campaigning for you. Bill Clinton says that if those migrants that came in would have been properly vetted before the bipartisan bill that Donald Trump killed and all of that, if those, that this girl would be alive. She would be alive if it wasn't for the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration allowing these migrants to come in unvetted. Bill Clinton even says that, and he's campaigning for you.
A case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
If they'd all been properly vetted, then that wouldn't have happened. And then you hear some Democrat, they're laughing after he says that at this campaign event.
If they'd been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. Okay. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. Right. There wouldn't be a problem.
There wouldn't be a problem. No, there would be a problem. There would definitely be a problem. Listen to what this guy's saying. He's saying that the problem is not that all of these migrants are coming across. He says the problem is that these migrants are coming across unvetted. He says, but if we can vet these migrants, we need these migrants because we're not having enough babies. We're aborting our babies. Our babies are being aborted. And we're fighting so you can abort your babies. But that means that if you're going to abort your babies and we're not having any kids, that means that we need people to come in and work and do these jobs. So we need these immigrants. We just need to make sure that they're vetted, that they're not going to come in and murder and kill people. And this is what they believe. This is what they believe. Chuck Schumer has said this and reiterated this. They've all talked about this, that we need people to come in and do these jobs and work. It's not that they need people to come in and do these jobs and work. They need these people to come in so they can keep wages low. That's what they want. That's what they need these people to come in and do. It's not that they need them to come in and work. They need them to come in and keep wages low. Because if they don't get these migrants to come in and work, that means that the employers are going to have to pay more for workers. So to keep wages low, they have to have the migrants come in. And we're not having enough kids. We're aborting our kids. You abort your kids, and then we'll bring in migrants to replace them. I mean, they tell you that the replacement theory is racist, but I mean, how is this not replacement? You're not having kids. We're telling you to abort your kids, and then we're bringing in migrants to replace them in the workforce. It's not a replacement?
Now more than ever, we're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it
Listen,
used.
I love the way he does this with his hand. Like, we have a population that's not producing on its own. Like, we're killing the baby.
reproducing it on its own.
Yeah, we're killing the baby. And he does that. It makes reference to the stomach where the baby would be there incubating in a mother's womb. He makes reference to that and says, we're not having enough babies. We're killing the babies at Planned Parenthood. So we got to bring in the migrants to do the work.
On its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we embrace the immigrants.
Level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented.
So that's their plan. That's their plan. They're giving up the plan. That's Chuck Schumer giving up the plan. Bill Clinton giving up the plan that we want the migrants. We need the migrants to keep the wages low. They just got to be vetted, is what he says. So Kamala Harris, again, at the town hall with Anderson Cooper the other night, she's asked about this. Let's take a listen.
Well, thank you, Jackson. Let's start with this. America's immigration system is broken and it needs to be fixed. And it's been broken for a long time. And part of what we need to do is always prioritize what we need to do to strengthen our border. I will tell you, I'm the only person in this race among the two choices that voters have. I've personally prosecuted transnational criminal organizations in the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career making sure that our border is secure and that we do not allow criminals in and we don't allow that kind of trafficking to happen and come into our country. And as my opponent has proven himself, he would prefer to run on the problem instead of fix the problem. You may know there were some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress working with others that came up with a border security bill that would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. Those border agents are overwhelmed. They need the support. They need the backup. It would have allowed us to have more resources to stem the flow of fentanyl. I don't need to tell this state and people around the country what is happening in terms of the scourge of fentanyl and how it is literally killing Americans. It would have put resources into stemming the flow. It would have given more resources to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute transnational criminal organizations. It would have done a lot of good. Donald Trump got wind of the bill and told them, don't put it forward. He killed the bill.
He killed the bill. He killed the bill. 6 Democrats voted against it, but Donald Trump told them to do it, and Democrats followed his will too. Killed the bill.
Flow. It would have given more resources to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute transnational criminal organizations. It would have done a lot of good. Donald Trump got wind of the bill and told them, don't put it forward. He killed the bill because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. We have to have a secure border, and we have to have a comprehensive pathway for citizenship.
A comprehensive pathway to citizenship. Listen to that.
Don't put it forward. He killed the bill.
Complementary pathway to citizenship, because we need those. We need those workers. We need those workers. Keep wages low. So we got to have a comprehensive pathway to citizenship, is what she says.
Donald Trump got wind of the bill and told them, don't put it forward. He killed the bill because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. We have to have a secure border, and we have to have a comprehensive pathway for citizenship. And that includes...
So Anderson Cooper, he's feeling a little like a journalist here, and he's not just going to these are the talking points about the bill in February. Donald Trump killed the bill. The bill would have put all these agents at the border and would have, fixed everything, is what she says. The bill in February, 9 months ago, that Donald Trump told the 6 Democrats not to vote for it either. Anderson Cooper pushes her a little bit on this. Not even a lot, but I was surprised to see Anderson Cooper do what you're getting ready to see him do. And boy, she does not handle it well.
Hiring people, hardworking people to earn citizenship and do it in a comprehensive, humane, and orderly manner.
Let me ask you about that. I mean, you talk about the bill that Donald Trump quashed. That was in 2024. You talk about the bill he tried to get passed in 2021. That wasn't able to get passed. 2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
I want to summarize. Let me summarize. Let me summarize what Anderson Cooper just said, because she talks about this bill that they tried to get passed when her and Joe Biden first came into office, and they controlled both houses of Congress. They controlled the House of Representatives and they controlled the Senate. Remember, she holds the record of the most tie-breaking votes in the Senate of any vice president ever in the history of the country. She's broken more tie-breaking votes. They did it for tons of things. So they controlled both houses of Congress and the White House when they first came into office, and they tried to do a comprehensive bill that legalized the 11 million undocumented people in the country. They couldn't get it passed. They couldn't get it passed along party lines. I guess Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema were blocking it. I know exactly why that didn't pass, but they were in charge. And then the bill in February, which was bipartisan, they had Opie Cunningham Langford out of Oklahoma who brought it and had worked with them on it. They couldn't get that one passed in February. But he says between that bill in 2021 and the bill in 2024, just 9 months ago, there were record numbers of crossings. Record numbers of crossings. You guys sued the state of Texas and made them remove the barriers out of the Rio Grande. You guys sued the state of Texas and fought them in court and says that they couldn't implement a policy to arrest illegal migrants that came across illegally. You guys fought the state of Texas and forced him to remove barbed wire. You're being very you're not being very helpful to the state of Texas, where most of these migrants are coming through the entire time. You removed the stay in Mexico policy that Donald Trump had that was working fine. You reinstate catch and release. All these policies that you do between 2021 and 2024, where you're getting record numbers of crossings. After the bill fails 9 months ago, because you're in an election year in 2024, the bill fails that they had been working on in a bipartisan manner, because Trump told them to kill the bill and 6 Democrats voted against it. So after that, after you couldn't get that legislation passed, you implement executive orders. Biden administration says we're going to institute executive orders that are going to shut down the border. And then Anderson Cooper says, since that executive order, we've seen a major decrease in the amount of migrants that crossed over. Why didn't you do that executive order in 2021? Why didn't you do that executive order in 2022 when you're getting record numbers of crossings? That's what Anderson Cooper asked her.
To get past 2020. Let me ask you about that. I mean, you talk about the bill that Donald Trump quashed. That was in 2024. You talk about the bill he tried to get passed in 2021. That wasn't able to get passed. 2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
First of all, you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact,
Yeah,
the
he
numbers
just
I saw
said that.
most recently, illegal immigration.
Yeah, he just said that.
With that executive action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action. Congress has the authority and the purse. I'd hate to use DC.
Yeah, you guys controlled Congress. You guys controlled Congress up until 2023. You control Congress. You have the most tie-breaking votes of any vice president in the history of the country. You guys controlled Congress. So what do you mean Congress needs to act? Why didn't you guys act? Why didn't the Democrats act when they controlled Congress?
Couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action. Congress has the authority and the purse. I'd hate to use DC terms, but literally they write the checks. Part of the issue is in order to really fix the problem at the border. I was just at the border recently talking with border agents. You know what they talk about? Yes, they are overwhelmed. They're working around the clock. And the other thing that they talk to me about, we need more judges down there to deal with asylum claims. We need more personnel down there to deal with processing. But Anderson, and that's where Congress kicks in terms of dedicating the resources to actually fixing the problem.
This was just brutal.
Such that, to your point, we now, as of today, as of our visit, have lower undocumented immigrants and illegal immigration than Trump.
Yeah, yes, you do. That's what he's saying. Yeah, because of the executive order that you did in June. That's what he's saying. Why didn't you do that back in 2021, 2022?
We now, as of today, as of our visit, have lower undocumented immigrants and illegal immigration than Trump when he left office.
That's true.
But we need a permanent solution, and that requires bipartisan work.
Do you wish you'd done those executive orders in 2022, 2023?
I think we did the right thing, but the best thing that can happen for the American people is that we have bipartisan work happening, and I pledge to you that I will work across the aisle to fix this long-standing problem. I think the American people are demanding it on both sides of the aisle, and it's time we actually put the partisan approach to this aside. We know what can work.
Well, let's talk about this compromise bill that you want to pass if you're elected. You said that's going to be a priority. It includes $650 million in funding for the border wall. That's something Republicans wanted. That was part of the compromise. Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it?
Wow. So this is I don't have time to, so this is just brutal. Anderson Cooper got into it last night with Charlemagne the God, and he admits that he's been getting a lot of pushback because he pushed back on Kamala Harris in this town hall. I want you to listen to what Anderson Cooper says here about the comments that he's getting from Harris supporters that are angry at him that he did journalism and actually pushed her on some of these things.
Where, you know what, I got so many, I don't look at comments about myself, but I was looking up some comments about my Grief podcast, and I came across this whole inundation from people who are Harris supporters saying to me online today, like, how dare you, what a betrayal that you would ask her these questions.
No, and I'm like, how dare you, what a betrayal that you would ask her these questions. So this is just yesterday. The town hall was the day before yesterday. So all of these Harris supporters, they come in into Anderson Cooper's mention, and they dog him. They are putting him on blast because he dared to challenge her. Just have something else that I really wanted to focus on. I don't have time. I'll pick this up on Monday. So, man, I have a lot more that I wanted to share with you guys. I wanted to get back into the financial crises and what happened in 2009 to let Wall Street off, and how the Obama administration blocked Congress and wouldn't take up any of their recommendations for prosecution. I'm going to get back into that on Monday. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and then I'll see you on Monday.